Okay, thank you very much. It's good to be here. Greg's right. It's unusual for an educator to come and speak at a Lean, Kanban kind of thing with programmers and project managers and things. But I want to just share with you today the story of education. And when I talk education, I'm primarily talking K-12, United States American education. I'm not an expert in national or collegiate kinds of stuff. But I think this is really important. I think education is the cornerstone for every entrepreneurial endeavor, everything we get accomplished. And so I'm painfully aware how far behind education is, and I'm also painfully aware that we continue to ascribe to non-solutions to these problems because we fail to think about education in a socio-cultural, complex, adaptive way like Snowden talked about this morning. I'm Associate Superintendent of the Cedar Rapids Schools. We are the second largest school district in Iowa, but to put that in perspective for Californians, there are 17,000 students in our school district. We're the second largest, so I realize that qualifies as a really small school district in this area. So I have an important question for you. I'm going to give you about 30 seconds of think time, and then we're going to call out your response to this. What do you need to know, be able to do, and be like as a successful adult, community member, citizen? What is it you need to know, be able to do, and be like to be as successful as you are? 30 seconds think time, and then I'm going to ask you to call some answers out. Okay, stay away from that. All right, this way.
We definitely need to know about feedback.
Yes. All right, shout out responses to the question. What do you need to know, do, and be like to be successful as an adult? Read. Know how to learn.
Communicate.
Critical thinking. Digital literacy.
Typical expectation of the society you live in.
All right. Societal norms.
Work well with others.
Work well with others. Keep self safe.
How to ask important questions.
Know how to ask important questions. Curious.
Financial know-how.
Financial know-how. History and politics. Have a purpose.
Match intent with actions.
Social literacy.
Match intent with action. Growth mindset. Evaluate options. Happy. Communications up here, yep. That's all right. Make decisions.
Understand how the world works.
Know how to what?
How to code.
How to code.
About how to hire people to do the stuff that you don't know are able to do once.
So surround yourself with
Or how to hire a
surround yourself with
advisor or something like that.
so
Or anything you can't do, you want
so
to get access to someone who can.
all right. So it really addresses the issue of working with diverse groups of people who bring all kinds of different skills and perspectives.
To be able to get access to them. It's almost more like hiring advisors or something.
Yeah, surrounding yourself with people who don't think exactly like you, right? All right. What's great about this list is this is virtually the same list I get every single time I ask it, no matter where in the country I ask it, right? I get the very same things. I want people to be collaborative. I want them to know how to learn. I want them to be able to think critically. I want them to be able to communicate in a variety of different ways. I want them to be curious. I want them to be happy. I want them to have a growth mindset. I hear this again and again and again, okay? Now, here's another question for you. How did you get these skills? How did you get them? Are you done? Are you done with them? And what was your roadmap? How did you get there? How did you get these, right? Just turn to someone next to you and 1 minute each. So this is like a very brief roadmap, but how did you get these skills? Right? Where did they come from?
Stumble through life. Yeah, that's right. I don't know. Yeah, that's a good question. TV. Well, and even media. Well, let's say popular media. Popular media, school, family situation.
About 30 seconds.
Like even when we're reading, it's always a simulation in our head of what we think is going on. It's always that, even whether I read it or I watch it or something else, it's the same thing.
Okay, I'll grab that momentary pause. Thank you. I know that was a quick story. What I'm hoping you discovered is that everybody's roadmap's different. Everybody's way of getting these skills are different. We're all at different places, I bet, on all these kinds of things, right? But one of the things we don't think about often, and this is going to sound weird coming from a school superintendent, most of what we find useful and we learned after school, after we were out of school, right? But much of our public has this belief that, boy, everything important you learned from kindergarten to 12th grade. Well, you know, how many of you could whip out a differential equation for me right now? Or tell me the alliteration of mice and men, right? Because I'm sure you learned some of that stuff in school, right? So why do I share these kind of things? Because we have some serious crossroads I think we face here as a country. Here is what school is designed to teach kids, right? Bad news, most of the things on this list, schools do not purposefully teach. Accidentally, yeah. Purposefully, very little of these things up here. Okay? I think that's a problem because this is a list you said you need to be able to know and do to be successful adults. Here's what school teaches kids. That knowing a bunch of disparate stuff is important, right? A bunch of math, and then I run down the hall and I get a bunch of science, right? You get to do cool stuff only after you endure the boring stuff. Okay? Someone in charge knows the answer and the way. Failure is fatal to be avoided at all costs. If you have a kid in high school who got a C on their paper, what happens to their chances for an A for the class? Just disappeared, right? So failure is a fatal kind of thing in school. Staying busy and being obedient for the good of the group is the most valuable thing. External motivators are what people care about. Some people are smart and some people are dumb. And the best GPA and the most inked up transcript wins. Okay? Those are the things that our school teaches. Not because teachers are terrible people, not because administrators are inept, some of them are, but because the system was designed to teach them these things. Okay? Another question, a little different tact. The last time we led the world in these 4 things, what was the year? Anybody know? What was the last year where the United States led the world in reading scores? Shout out tonight. 60, 61, 45. How about math? Late 50s, 69. Science. Oh, we know it wasn't 57, right? It was Sputnik, right? Although that was a huge sham too, but 65. Creativity and innovation. Ah. I couldn't find exactly. I couldn't remember. 2010, 2011, sometime in the International Index of Innovation, based on how many patents we have, how many new products and services in that we create in the United States. We were number 1 until the last few years, and we've slipped, right? That's a good question. I didn't even pay attention today. Couldn't tell you. What's interesting to me is that this huge push across the country that we are falling behind all these countries in reading and math, and we've never been ahead. We were never ever. We've rarely ever been in the top 10. We've always been about the mid-teens, right? But we've turned it into this crisis, right? Meanwhile, our number 1 ranking in creativity and innovation, which, by the way, we held for about 40 years, is slipping away. And I bet I'm with some kindred spirits who would say that is the distinguishing feature of a successful economy and culture today, creativity and innovation, and we're letting it slip out of our hands, right? So for me, there's a deep sense of urgency around this kind of work. So as I mentioned, we're at a crossroads. We can continue to do what we've always done in education for 50 years, the last 20 been very intense, and that is reform our system, try to continuously improve it into something new. Or we can take a different path, the path that I call transformation, and that is starting with blank sheet design, right? And for those programmers in here in the room, you get it, right? You can only mess with an old set of code and try to make it better for so long before you just need to pull the trigger and start all over, right? I feel that's about where we are with education. One of my favorite systems folks, Jamshid Rajadagi, said this, that without a theory, understanding the theory and the system you're in, you're condemned to continue to repeat the same mistakes again and again. And there's ample evidence in education that that's what we're doing, right? We continue to recycle the same non-solutions because we don't understand the theory behind education and the functions we're trying to produce and so forth. So here's my thesis. Education system is not broken. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Matter of fact, it's doing it better than it's ever done in its 120-year history of the high school as we know it now in school. Okay? We create more high school graduates with higher test scores than ever before. Okay? And we'll hear people come back and say, oh, the 50s were better. The dropout rate across the country in the 50s was about 50%. So with the 50% who stayed in school, yes, they did quite well. What happened to the other 50% in 1958? In Iowa, they went to work for John Deere, an International Harvester, and Rath Packing, right? And they could live a nice life with that, right? Those jobs don't exist anymore. So it's much like this typewriter, right? This typewriter's not broken. It does exactly what it's designed to do. If it has ribbon in it and a piece of paper, it's going to type words on a page when I hit the keys, right? But is it obsolete? When's the last time you've ever seen a typewriter, used one? Okay, I guess we've answered the question, haven't we? They're obsolete. But in education, we have been taking this typewriter and cajoling it to log on to the internet, to become a word processor, to run, help us do Excel spreadsheets, right? And we keep getting angrier and angrier as a society because that typewriter will not, I just don't understand why you can't get it to log on the internet. Come on, this can't be that hard. Can't you continuously improve that thing? Put a card in it, do something, attach a mouse to it, maybe that would help, right? Maybe we need to use different kind of paper, right? How do we get it to project up on a screen, right? You laugh because you know how ridiculous that is, right? The only way we get to an internet-based computer is to not start with the typewriter. Yeah, there's some common things. The QWERTY keyboard still lives on, even though it was designed to slow people's typing down. But other than that, it's all completely different. So education system in America is obsolete. Okay, so let's talk about that a bit. 1781, we can go back and see the purpose of education. It's still this purpose today. The system is designed to meet this purpose. Thomas Jefferson, being the progressive that he was, understood that out in the countryside, there's likely a kid or two out there who are pretty smart and they need the opportunity to go to school, and we can figure out which ones are the smart ones. And in his notes on the state of Virginia, he actually, these are the exact words he used. The purpose of education is to rake the genius from the rubbish. We've softened that, in the 20th century, softened that to call that sort and select. Okay. So what does that mean? It means well, let me go back here. In the industrial age, about the turn of the 20th century, what did we need? Lots of workers who were obedient, followed a bell schedule, did what they were told, and could do monotonous, constant work day after day. Same thing, right? We needed a bunch of them. What did we need a small group of? Creative people, artists, lawyers, doctors, managers, right? So we designed school to perfectly fit the industrial age America we found ourselves in, our forefathers, right? And they designed a beautiful system. It helped us become the most powerful, wealthiest nation in the whole world because it was perfectly aligned, right? We bring kids in, we teach them basic things, basic reading, basic writing. If we got them to 4th grade level, that was great. If we could get most of them to 8th grade, even better. That was about as far as we cared to go. The top 10 or 15% would move right through. Well, how do you design a highly efficient, standardized education system to match the factory age? What do you do? What do you do? Make it the same everywhere. You tear down every part down to its minuscule little piece, right? So I can't screw up. If I worked at Ford back in the day, if my job was hanging doors on cars, I didn't put tires on, I just hung the door. Somebody else put the bolts in, right? So you break the work down, you bring the work to the worker, you batch your products, and you move them through the assembly line as fast as you can. And what do you do with the waste? When do you find out if things are defective? At the end, right? At the end, and you just throw away the ones that are terrible, and the other ones that need minor fixing you might fix, and so forth, right? Well, think about how school's designed. How do your children experience school? They go in age-based batches. Do they travel to the teachers? Yep. Do the teachers teach discrete sets of skills? You're not just a math teacher, right? You're a calculus teacher, or an algebra 2 teacher, or an American literature teacher. Okay? And what happens if your kid can't keep up with the pace of the schoolwork? They fall behind. They get labeled special education, or they forever fall behind, and then they start thinking they're stupid, right? All these kind of things. We designed the system exactly that way, okay? So it shouldn't be a surprise that it produces that kind of result. Well, schools were designed in the classical systems thinking model. And the word reform, when you hear people talk about education reform, Their mental model is one of continuous improvement of a classical systems kind of thing. Reform really means the improvement or amendment of something that's wrong, corrupt, or unsatisfactory. It assumes the system you have is capable of delivering what you want. So much of our conversation today, we assume that the schools we have can get us what we want if we just figure it out, get the right people in there, get the right schedule, so forth. It also believes you can continuously improve into something new. It assumes the whole is simply a sum of every part and adopts a some X is good, more X is better approach. I love this one. You know how we should improve schools? Let's add 5 minutes to the school day. How about adding 2 more credits for graduation? How about 3 more days to the school year? Okay? Some X is good, more X is better. Being bored to death for 3 more days really isn't going to make a difference, right? And it assumes generally that the system is pristine. The problem is in the people and the processes. It's not the system's problem. Okay? Also what we see in education is people believe that it's a misapplication of a known solution. That there's a known solution out there that would work in any context and we just need to apply it. Give it to smart people who can do it, right? So there's got to be this one way of teaching reading. There has to be this one way, this one perfect schedule for high school that would work. We target individual parts for improvement. In this country, we only care really about 2 things: how they did on their reading test and their math test. Science, history, why do they need that, right? Okay, so we focus in on individual parts and we believe that if we can improve everybody's literacy, that somehow everything gets better. It's all about standardization, efficiency, replicability, all of these kind of things that as you're involved in Kanban and Lean, you start to understand that this is fine and dandy for an assembly line, but when you're talking about people, it's the wrong answer. Here's some recent headlines that help illustrate the point I'm trying to make about what people think about education. I love that one. I'm like, come spend a week with me, see how coasting it really is. Then we had 2 leading education folks say this. And my favorite one from Miss Ree. She's learned that cooperation, collaboration, and consensus building are way overrated. So those of you that put that up here, you're on the wrong path apparently. Okay? So there's lots of criticism, lots of people angry, wanting it to change. Right? So what are we going to do about it? What can we do about it as folks involved with Lean and Kanban and that kind of work? We can really work at chipping away on this mechanical systems belief, right? This reductionist, one right answer, standardization is efficiency at the top of the list. If we can remove those kinds of ideas, we can get things happening. Here's some implicit assumptions that we have about school. You may have, your kids may have. That grades and tests are valid and reliable measures of student learning. If we believe that, every conference should ask us to put our GPA, our high school GPA here, and our ACT or SAT score, and then we can all stand in rank order, and then we would know who the best people in the room were, right? Okay. Time spent in class with a teacher is the best way to learn. Assigning kids by their age, as if age is the most important thing about kids that puts them together, is the best way. That a standardized curriculum, a standardized delivery method, and age-based expectations about how much you should be able to read at age 8 and so forth ensures high level of learning. That we know what they need to know when they need to know it. You learn differential equations around October 28th or so, your 11th grade year. That was the perfect day and time to learn differential equations, right? And when kids don't succeed on that prescribed timeline, what do? We identify the problem. Stupid, lazy teachers, poor leadership, protective unions, misaligned curriculum, low expectations. Right? You've heard all this, right, in the news when you watch the stuff? But here's what we know about learning. Here's what we've learned tons in the past decade about how the brain works and how people learn. When you replace internal motivation, and Snowden said this morning, a person's passion with an external carrot, you kill their passion. You kill the internal motivation. Right? Grades and points and GPAs and class ranks and valedictorians are all methods of externally motivating and removing an internal motivation that kids have. Teaching is often the biggest obstruction to learning. How many teachers have you had that you said, if you just shut up and let me take off on stuff, I could learn this stuff. Exposing learners to the appropriate challenging ideas at the right time maximizes their learning. Right? These are all no-does, right? When you run up against a problem, you really want to know it. Do you learn it? Do you know where to go to find out? Sure. Curriculum is largely a hoax. We actually know very little about what somebody knows to know first before they need to know something next. Yeah, in some places we do. But generally we don't, right? Application of their knowledge is the most important thing. We don't get around to that typically in K-12 education because we're too busy with the upfront facts and stuff. Now don't get me wrong, don't leave here and go, I just talked to the superintendent who doesn't care how kids do on their math and literacy. That's not what I'm saying, right? Learning isn't linear and not very predictable. We assume there's this linearity to learning, that all 8-year-olds have the capacity to learn this at this time, right? And it just builds upon itself. When in fact it's individualized, dynamic, cyclical, right? It's stop and start. It may take a long time and then all of a sudden you get it, right? The power curve, you've all experienced that. Trying to do some coding or making something happen and nothing's going on and nothing's going on and nothing's going on and then boom, the next day 80% of it's done because there it is, right? That's what learning is. We assume it's a linear kind of track. So, we need a new narrative in education. We have to change the conversation in our communities and in our country about what it is we need for education. Because we all know what we need. We have to be able to separate that need from the existing way it's set up. So my new narrative is about transformation and hope and possibility and bringing in the community, giving the community back its schools, and doing that with a socio-cultural, complex, adaptive, like Snowden talked about, approach. Giving people the flexibility and to be effective, don't overly focus on efficiency and so forth. Recent studies are suggesting that a student's sense of hope and possibility about their future are greater predictors of success than their ACT, SAT scores or their GPA. Right? That's a pretty powerful kind of thing, right? So how do we build resilient kids? We didn't put resilient up here, right? But I bet that's something you've thought of. How do you have a sense of self-efficacy, a sense of resiliency, a picture of what it is you're trying to make happen, those kind of things. But without a shift in this thinking, the methodology becomes technique and the practice imitation, and we see this again and again. People shake their heads, yep, this is all the stuff we need. Put my kid in Algebra 2. Right? There's this disconnect, right? So let me tell you what we're doing in our little neck of the woods. We're in what's called the Iowa's Creative Corridor. It's about 500,000 people total with Iowa City. University of Iowa is there, Cedar Rapids. We started a school called Iowa Big. And it's based on the premise that we don't know what kids need to learn when, but we do know what they need to learn. We just don't know when, and we don't know how they're gonna learn it best. And we want to return kids to their passions and their interests. So this is Kinsey Farmer. Kinsey had just turned 17. She's a high school junior. She joined the school last year. We asked her, why are you joining? It's not really a school so much as a program that they can take as a class or a couple classes. She said, I'm just bored to death with school. I get A's. The kids are immature. The teachers treat me like babies. I'm just tired of it. I'm looking for something different. So she joined Big, and our first question we ask our Big students is this: what makes you mad? what in the world makes you mad? She thought for a minute, and she said, I don't like the way girls follow their boyfriends around like puppy dogs in my school. And the teacher's like, oh man, you know, there's an elephant by the tail, what am I going to do with this one? But he gets to talking with her, and she's like, I want to be a mom, I want to be a professional woman, I see the glass ceiling, I see my own mother struggle with it, and then I see all these girls in my school who aren't thinking a thing about what it is they're going to become and what they want to do. She goes, that bothers me. Well, in our school, you have to solve that problem. Is that something the community cares about? Turns out, yeah. Is it something you can make a difference? Yep, I think so. So she started investigating, doing some chemistry, and learning that the chemicals in men and women's brains are different. And they react on our brains different, and it allows that we see the world differently, right? So she's learning that, and then she says, I'm going to go talk to this neuroscientist down at the University of Iowa. It turns out she's a leader in this field. So we teach her some interviewing skills, how to talk to an adult. She goes down, does this interview. The neuroscientist is really excited about it, says, you need to talk to these other two people. So she starts interviewing these two people who, right? So she builds this network, and she ends up interviewing 20, 30 women in our corridor around this issue. And she came back, she goes, the teacher says, well, what are you going to do with it? This is great, you've learned this stuff, but what are you going to do? And she says, well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a TEDx conference. I love TEDx. I want to give a TEDx, and the only way I'm going to get to do a TEDx is if I host one. So she signs up for TEDx, submits the paperwork, and guess what? Can't have a TEDx. Who knows why? Maybe she's only 16. They thought it was a joke. Who knows? Well, what would most kids do in most classroom settings at that point in time? Can I just get my C+? You know, what's my next assignment? Right? Well, we don't do that at this school. Teacher said, so you can pout about it for a day or two, but what are you going to do? What are you going to do? She says, I'm going to have my own conference. I'm going to call it Success to the Power of She. Brilliant. She starts connecting with her network of leading women entrepreneurs and business leaders and community leaders in our area. And they start connecting her to others, as I was mentioning. This Friday, I'm flying home tomorrow morning so that I can be there on Friday. She's holding her conference to a sold-out auditorium of 300 high school kids, college kids, and leading women in our community. The lieutenant governor of Iowa is coming. The head women's basketball coach at the university, and a couple of those the world's leading neuroscientists in the differences between men and women's chemical brain makeup are coming to speak at her workshop. And she's one-upping TED. She's going to have them do the presentation, and then they're going to another room with round tables, and each one of her mentors are going to sit at separate tables and start to mentor other young high school girls to show them what's possible, to show them that there's a lot more out there and that they can take hold of it. Okay. Now, how's that different than school? It's dynamic. It's dynamic, it's interactive.
Puts ownership of learning on the, you want to make it intrinsic, they have to own it.
Yep. She has to own it. It's her passion. It wasn't designed by the teacher. Right. Snowden talked today about putting people in places where serendipity can happen. How else you can get the lieutenant governor to come and speak, right? Okay. Community and cultural enhancing, and kids start to get to do, and they get to understand that the only way you make things happen in the world is doing stuff with what you know. It's not about knowing stuff. The smartest person in the room doesn't win. The person who knows how to do stuff wins, right? If you're smart along with it, it helps, but, right? So people always say, oh, well, that's great, but what about calculus, right? Well, one, Kenzie's not going to need calculus because that's not her interest area, but that aside, we've been mapping her academic standards on the Common Core, the National Common Core standards. In one class period a day is all she could afford to take this. She's met most of the standards for all of those subject areas. 1 hour a day for a school year, right? So that begs the question, are we even really that efficient with the way we're running school now? Here's the crux of it. Our education system's new function is this. It's not to rake the genius from the rubbish. It's to unfold the potential of every child. You don't do that by sorting and selecting. You don't do that by forcing kids to take classes they see no relevance for. You do that by forming other options and things for kids, right? Snowden talked today about exaptation, X meaning outside of. School culture is horrific in terms of change, because if we introduce this inside an existing school, it's like a virus being introduced to the body. The white cells gather around and just crush the thing, right? So how do we adapt and move forward when we have such an old traditional bureaucratic system? You start these schools outside of the physical structure of school. Our school is in the heart of an entrepreneurial area in the New Bow market area of Cedar Rapids. Our kids go down to this school and they interact with entrepreneurs in co-working spaces, and they're out in businesses solving real business problems for our partners. So a post-industrial age school needs to be facing the community, fueled by kids' passions, project-driven, real projects, based on performance, not grades and points and homework and worksheets. And what we are finding is we're getting resilient, efficacious doers. That's what we're getting. And Kinsey's just one example of many. Versus the current model, which is classroom-centric, ownership-averse, learning-averse, mistake-averse, and we create what I affectionately called my 17-year-old a grade addicted credit chaser. Worried about what grade she's going to get on what test and so forth. So what does lean have to do with this? What does Kanban have to do with this? It's all about the Kanban notion of not pushing stuff at people, letting them draw it as they need it and so forth. That's what we're talking about here. Lean startup stuff, thinking differently about how systems operate, giving kids flexibility and choice, making all that happen. That was the fastest 40 minutes I could imagine. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate you inviting an educator to your management event. So thanks. I'll stick around with questions. Yes.
Have you heard of the MAKE movement that's going on?
The maker movement? Yep.
Yeah, the MAKE movement is really driving some change in the Bay. I don't know outside the Bay Area. It's driving change because people are bringing it into the classroom.
Yep.
Kids and parents are beginning to demand it.
Mhm.
So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about how you go out into the community to encourage communities that it's a safe place to bring ideas to the forefront that potentially will fail, but potentially will be like the young woman who described.
How we're doing it is we're employing strategic partners, businesses, nonprofits, government entities. And when we approach and say, we want you to be a partner with our big students, you can be a mentor, you can come in and do some instruction with them in your area of expertise, financial literacy, whatever it might be. But what we really want are projects. And every organization has their list of stuff they want to do for the year, and then they got to draw that resource line, right? We can only get these 3 done. We're going out and asking businesses and organizations, give us those. Give us those and let our kids get after them. Because if they bomb, what happens? You weren't going to do them anyway. And if they're successful, you just won. Well, guess what we're finding? Almost every time they win, because kids are smart as hell. And they can figure stuff out. And they have novel approaches. And they're not afraid of coming in and going, why do you do it that way? That just seems really stupid. And that's exactly how they'll say it, right? So that's how we're bringing our community in, and our businesses are just, we have so many problems and issues and opportunities in our community, we'll never run out of projects.
So, former high school teacher of mine, first and homework time with this kid now is Common Core. because he needs a beer when he's done. And it's been explained to him that
Yeah.
and it's been explained that when they're trying to take math, take it from a memorization-based teach to a comprehension-based teach, and that's why you're starting to see these examples changing. So, is Common Core a mouse and a typewriter, or is it a step to recruiting?
That's a tough question. People either love the Common Core or hate it. There's enough flexibility in the Common Core. It doesn't tell you how to teach it. It's just some of the key elements. So we're able to adapt this approach pretty easily. The difficult thing is that if you think the Common Core is the savior and you go to your school and we're still teaching subjects in isolation in 50-minute batches with one teacher at the front, it's a difference that makes no difference, honestly. Yeah.
I heard you say that the traditional education system, it's not the processes, it's not the people, it's the system. So what does this mean? It's not people and processes.
Well, I see the system as four things: the context that system exists in, the function, what is it designed to produce, the structures, and the processes. And we tend in education to focus on people, just fire all the bad teachers, put new teachers in. That doesn't work. Or the processes of how long they're in class, and that we've done a poor job of understanding that the function has fundamentally changed from sorting and selecting to unfolding the potential of everybody. And form follows function, right? So if that's the new function, we need new structures as well as processes in that. A community has the will to do it, you can do it. I think the function's already changed. We just still believe that the old structures will somehow get us there.
Take one more question.
Okay.
Real quick one first. Is any of this influenced by Carol Dweck's work in mindset? I'm just curious.
Yeah, she's,
Fundamental growth versus fixed views. Those two columns you described are two different.
yeah, growth, fixed mindset, huge part.
The second one is from a systems. I don't know if in talking with any of the educators about that, because you said systems theory in the title of your talk. It's kind of hard. Human beings are identified as being complex adaptive systems, each individual. So it's kind of what's broken is that you have a simple system, recipe-driven system, trying to educate complex adaptive systems.
Right. Exactly. And then what I learned today about how it even changes your DNA, I'm trying not to get dispirited by that, but given I work in a 130-year-old organization, so. All right.
I think we say thank you very much.
Yep.